Andrea, as people join...
so this isn't working then.
Are you okay, Margaret? Shall I?
It is now.
So, Andrea, as we start, if people join and they haven't muted, I'll be whizzing up and down the participants list, muting them, so don't worry too much about that.
Okay.
So, right, well, it's 2:30, so I think we'll make a start. So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to South Wales Region of the Royal Photographic Society. If we haven't met before, my name's Stuart Wall. I'm the regional organiser of the East Midlands region. And of course, it should be Rhys Jones sat here talking to you at the moment. And unfortunately, Rhys sadly passed away in November last year. But I do remember him talking about when he set this talk up, and he was extremely excited because, of course, Andrea was part of the university where he did his MA. So he held Andrea in such high esteem. And I remember him telling me that he was thinking about doing a fellowship by research. And of course, Andrea, and I've noticed Afsal Ansari has joined us this afternoon. They are both assessors for the RPS fellowship, or I shouldn't say that, the RPS Distinctions by Research. Andrea has been involved in photography for an awful long time. And I think that's something that people often overlook. They kind of link academia with a different type of photography, but I think what you'll hear today is that Andrea has been involved in all sorts of photography. She has been very heavily involved in universities. She's been on the Distinctions Advisory Board of the RPS, so she's been involved for a long, long time. So Andrea, I'm going to hand over to you now and let you take over if that's okay.
Fine, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Why am I not coming up on the big screen? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You probably won't, you might not see yourself. Don't worry, we can see you loud and clear.
Okay, fine, yeah. Fine. Right, I just introduced myself anyway. I've already been introduced, I know, but I'm now an emeritus professor of photography from the university. I'm going to be talking today mostly about my more academic photography, or more photography that I'm really interested in. I have done quite a lot of commercial photography as well in the past, and all through my life I've done a fair bit of commercial photography, from newspaper photography to scientific photography. So I'll be talking about that. I'm hoping I'm not going to go on and on and on and on and everybody get bored. But I am using some notes which are a computer screen behind my laptop, which I'm using to show, to talk to you. And so if you keep seeing me look up to my left, it's not that I'm not interested, it's because I'm just checking that I've said the things that I wanted to say. Because when we had the rehearsal, I just went off piste quite a lot. Okay, I'm now going to share the screen. I'm hoping.
Yep. At the moment, Andrea, we're looking at your desktop.
I know, you're looking at the actual.
With the PowerPoint. That's perfect. You're there. Thank you very much. But
okay,
are you at the end of your talk? We're looking at thank you.
I am very sorry. I've practiced this before, so yeah. I'm going to have to. Yeah, that's a good start, isn't it?
No, it's easily done, isn't it? So
yeah. Sorry.
You're a good student. We do say to students, practice, practice, practice. So well done, Andrea. You've not forgotten. Thank you.
Right. Okay. The talk's going to be called Beyond the Visible, and it'll become more apparent why it's called that during the talk. You were very kind, Stuart, not to say how long I've been in photography, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've been in photography for 50 years, or just over, and I started at the age of 16 at college. So this actually was my very first photograph that I'd taken. It was, my mum and dad gave me a Brownie 127, and it's a picture of them, sadly passed away now. And they gave me one roll of film, which most people had for their holidays. I only had one roll of film. And it was the only photograph set of photographs, one roll, 12, I think it was, photographs I took before I went to Plymouth Art School to study at 16. They wouldn't let me take the combination of A levels I wanted to take. And I was the only, because I wanted to do physics and art. And I was the only girl on the whole course for the whole time I was there. And I was younger than the others. So I was treated a bit like a little sister. And I took no photographs to the course. I took my artwork, and because I got the O levels and things, they accepted me. Oddly enough, the first camera they gave me to take photographs and learn to develop a film and load a spiral and everything like that was a Brownie 127, which is at that time was the only one I'd ever used. So, and I wanted to work on a newspaper. That's what I wanted to do. And where I came from, come from Plymouth, and a certain part of Plymouth, everybody worked in the dockyard. And so it seemed like a really glamorous job to work on a newspaper. I then went on to study at scientific photography at Westminster, what is now Westminster University. And after doing that, I actually had a job waiting for me, because in those days, the early 70s, people did wait for you for jobs. It was quite amazing. And there was lots of jobs in the various ministries, because I worked at the Natural History Museum while I was at college and various other places. And this was the first one was at East Malling Research Station. For any of you that grow apple trees, you will find that they've got an M rootstock, and that's what they were developing at East Malling Research Station, mostly fruit research and mostly apples and pears and things like that. And they had glass plates, black and white glass plates going back to the 1840s. Amazing, you know, that so early in photography, sort of 1849, 1848, but even so, it was amazingly old place. And they used the same cameras, I'm sure, 120 years later, 130 years later. So, and we still used glass plates, even though it was the 70s. And this is my own modern version of a field camera that we used. And the first thing they gave me was a bicycle and a pair of wellies. So that was my uniform. They gave me a pair of wellies straight away. Now this is a picture of me taken by somebody else, but it's on infrared film, and it was taken in the 80s. You can tell by the hair, with my Mamiya, my trusted Mamiya camera I had then. And that I've always been experimenting with different types of film. So I don't use film so much now, but I was using it up until very, very recently, really. And I explored using infrared and various other types of film. Then I had a few photographic jobs working in London, and after spending 7 months in the USA with my husband, my new husband as it was, I moved to North Wales and worked freelance. And then I finally got a job part-time lecturing. When I was lecturing, I still followed the rules I've been taught in photography, but I was really I liked working on my own in long exposures and black and white at that time, mostly because color took such a long time to process. I did a lot of 5:4 studio and Mamiya 645 outside, and also 5:4 outside. This is from a 5:4. That last image was the first image I sold as an art print, but looking back at it now, I think I need to digitally copy it properly and get it reprinted. After completing an MA in Manchester, I found myself really in the deep end. I was running the course at Bournemouth, which was one of the top courses in the country. We thought we were the best, but you know, other people might disagree. And although I'd applied for a lecturer position, the program director left and nobody else wanted to do the paperwork. So I found myself running a course with lot of overseas students and students such as Wolfgang Tillmans, who later went on to win the Turner Prize. Fortunately, I took him on and I was really keen on his work. First of all, I did quite romantic work. And then I went into colour because at Bournemouth, the facilities were fantastic for colour printing. And during this time, I had a couple of solar exhibitions. So I'm just moving my notes now. And I was interested in ideas of sense of place, how it felt like to be there. I wasn't interested in what something looked like. I was interested in what it looked like in the camera once it, not in the camera, but once it was developed, but not what it looked like through the viewfinder so much. So I did that, still doing long exposures to get that sort of unseen that only photography can produce. You can't reproduce even with painting, you reproduce it with the unseen. John Blakemore, photographer, once said that photography worked best when it made the invisible visible. And I was really interested in that aspect. I use that a lot in my teaching. And I still say now, for those of you waiting for the B photographs, they'll be right at the end. And when I gave a talk to that group, when I was just starting the project, as a group of scientists, I put on the screen a picture of Marks and Spencer's food photograph of a chocolate pudding with all the sauce coming out. And I said to them, when you look at a photograph, the sense you use the least is your sight. You smell a photograph, or you taste a photograph, or you touch it, or you just feel the wind or the sunlight or whatever. And it made it very obvious because all our mouths started watering when we saw this picture of a chocolate pudding. I was also becoming more of an environmentalist, and this photograph is one of the storms of the January 1990, when I first started at Bournemouth. And it wasn't the one of 1987, but it was equally as serious for some parts of the country. And these trees in High Wycombe, they fell like dominoes, but so I started doing a lot of work around that. And then I moved to Wales and to run the photography and video course. And at that time, two factors really affected my my photography. One was the aesthetics, and the other was environmental issues. And this one's taken with Ag for Ultra, if any of you remember it. It was a very intense colour film. Martin Parrs used it in his work to good effect. I really enjoyed that film because it didn't add extra contrast, it added extra intensity to the colour. And when I moved to Swansea, I'd had a couple of exhibitions while I was at Bournemouth, solo exhibitions. And then I had an exhibition at the Dylan Thomas Centre for Dylan Thomas Festival in Swansea. And I used poems by various people and Dylan Thomas. And this one is Dylan Thomas's poem in October. The larger print is been, bought by a few people. I was more interested in it as, again, out of focus rather than sharp, to give a feeling. Right, on to the PhD now. For those of you that don't want any theory, you can go and make a cup of tea. I'll try and make it as short as possible. So I started my PhD, and my PhD was about showing really that our value system concerned with the landscape is based on 18th century aesthetics, and photography has perpetuated that 18th century aesthetic. And what I had to do, first of all, you can see me small, I suppose, on the screen. That's my PhD. It's got a very complicated title, but it's 70,000 words, but it's photographs as well. And Jem Southern was one of my examiners. And first of all, I wanted to show that photography, teaching about how to do landscape photography by lots of books that you buy now, all the way back to the 18th century, where it was teaching painting, how to take a painting, it was the same. And then I started to look at other ways of photographing landscape. And that's the sort of crux of it. So these two statements, are they connected? That's what I was interested in. Are they connected? And this is a typical painting from the 18th century, where you've got a foreground which is dark, you've got interest in the foreground framing the sort of mid foreground, and then faint mountains in the distance to give it depth. And William, I don't know whether you can, yeah, William Gilpin in 1792 wrote, well, around that time, wrote lots of books about how to paint landscapes. And this is what he was saying. He's even got the faint purple mountains in the background. And again, with this one. Just make sure I'm saying everything right. What that's done is, because that aesthetic's been perpetuated, they've changed in the last 10 years or so. They've got more, well, 20 years maybe, got newer national parks like the South Downs. But most of our national parks that they first developed in the 50s, late 40s, 50s, were of mountain regions where you could take this sort of image or paint this sort of image. It still had the same aesthetics. They were the most important. But in addition to that, because you're standing on a hill away from the landscape, as Richard Mabey says, you miss so much. You miss whether something's become, might look pretty, but it might be underneath it full of chemicals, or it doesn't have any personal connection to you. And as John Fowles said, the greatest threat to our countryside is not what we do to it, but how we are detached from it. And that's changed in the last year, because people have been actually exploring the countryside on foot in amongst it now. So hopefully we'll get more people connected to the countryside. So I thought, oh, I'll probably never take a landscape photograph again. But what I found was my landscapes were a different type of landscape anyway. And Richard Mabey goes on to say, there's another type of landscape which is more personal. It's from ground level, and you look out from and not at. And that means that areas that aren't really photogenic, like hedgerows or the lowland peat bogs that we've lost so much of, they can be photographed in a different way from ground level. He isn't a photographer. He was talking in a book about painting. So I started turning my back on the view, really. This is one in a Perspex garden shed. I went on a fantastic summer school, and I was helping out the tutor, but every morning I woke up in the Dordogne in a beautiful place. It was fantastic food, lots of nice wine, and all day, every day, taking photographs. So I went out with people, and they were actually photographing the views, and I was looking in the other direction. Still in my Mamiya 645 then. I like to print dark, as you can see. And these were part of an exhibition I was accepted for, which was really nice. It was Robert Greetham in a magazine called Landscape said that they were a sensation of place as opposed to its description, which was perfect. This was just what I wanted to hear, really. And I mentioned before about poetry, and I've came back. This is sort of an aside, really. This is a little aside. What I was feeling about the work, it was getting quite rich and full of rich colour, and I wanted some antidote to that. So I took, this is a poem of a competition for the London Photographic Awards. And I'd already taken these photographs. I was in Finland teaching, and it was in the middle of the summer. And I was doing summer workshops over there. And I was walking back from having drinks with the students, and it was about 11:30 at night. And I thought, oh, this is fab. You know, I can walk through the woods. So I was walking through woods and also this park and everything at that time of night without any fear, because there was no crime in that town at all where I was, Hämeenlinna in Finland. And I'd given the students a Polaroid black and white film. It was before digital. This was before digital really took off. And if you take a black Polaroid slide film, you can develop it in a little box, and you just turn a handle and it develops, it goes through. And then I printed them onto Polaroid film with a special Polaroid printer. You put the slide in and it just goes the right size to a Polaroid piece of film, which you expose to it, and that's how it works. So I've taken these and then I put them into that competition, and they very much fitted that competition. And that move into black and white, especially those, they look like they're taken in the 30s, those pictures, I think, especially those sort of dark, obscure photographs, really helped me move on my colour work as well. Right. And then I moved into plastic. The students introduced, I'm trying to share the screen now, right? It's not share the screen. How do I do that? Excuse me a minute. That's all right, I've done it. Stop share. I just want to talk. Can they see me on a big screen? I can see you on a big screen.
Yes, we can. You've stopped sharing now. That's perfect. Thank you.
This is my trusted, no, actually this one is my trusted plastic camera. I've done more than 10 years work on the plastic camera. I love this plastic camera. It has all the faults that I was taught at 16 never to have in a photograph. It has barrel distortion, it's out of focus at the edges. It doesn't put the colors in all three colors in the right place. It's really difficult to load though, because it's falling apart. I have to tape this one up because when it was designed, it came in a box that said, had a picture of a woman and a child on it, and it said, "So easy, we can use it." I thought, I've got to use a camera that a woman can use, and it doesn't hold the film flat. So that's that one. That's a Roscoe. This is a Diana. This is a little bit posher, believe it or not, than the Roscoe, and it's easier and it exposes properly. The Roscoe has got three little things. It's got sunny, cloudy, and mid between the two. So, and it doesn't even on cloudy take a very exposed, correctly exposed photograph. So I have to develop the films, overdevelop them, and that has other problems. I'm going to share the screen again. Was that all right, everybody? So
yeah, Andrea, when you were talking about the sensor, presumably you were talking about the was it the Bayer principle where you've got three different colours, the sensor with the three different colours?
Oh yeah, the three light colours, primary light colours, which are red, green, and blue, as opposed to magenta, yellow, and cyan, which are the printing colours. They all got different wavelengths. So most cameras, most lenses have got coatings on them, so that the colours at different wavelengths all meet at the same, from the same point to the same point, from the same point in the environment. You know, what you're photographing, the subject, to the same point on the film. When you haven't got a very good lens, which is only sorry, I keep doing the wrong thing. Right. No, I've got to. Oh, sorry about this. Didn't realise. Oh yeah, there we are. When you've got a cheap plastic lens camera, the whole camera is plastic, but it's mostly important that the lens is plastic. it hasn't got the same number of elements, and it's also not got the same coatings on them, so they don't actually meet. You can see it at the edges in this photograph. I know it's a bit dark, but you can see when you get really close to it, you can see sort of multiple image. You can see sort of round the, sorry, I put my finger on something, you can't see me putting my finger on it. Up in the top right corner, you can see sort of a ghosting in red and yellow around the edges of the, that means that the red and yellow is not quite in the same place. But, and the barrel distortion makes it look more concave like that. Brilliant,
thank you very much.
Okay. And this photograph, this is one of the later ones on my plastic camera, but it's been very popular, this picture. And it was put at one of the things that has given me the most satisfaction in my photography is being included in Liz Wells's Landscape Matters book, because Ansel Adams is in it. Well, all the landscape photographers going through Century, and I'm in the gender section. But I was very thrilled to be included in that book. Really, really thrilled. All right. Yeah, so then I've used my plastic camera on, I'm really lucky. I was really lucky in my career, especially the end of it, when I was a dean. I went on lots and lots of either field trips, or I went across to different countries to try and promote the courses, or I went to talk to people about exchanges and things like that. So these are only a few of them, probably few hundred pictures, or even 1,000 pictures I've taken. No, probably a few hundred pictures I've taken on my plastic camera. So I've left the edges because I can't see it on my screen because I've got RURCS. It's giving me instructions on the top. But on the top of the frame, you'll see it's quite raggedy. And I know that's taken with the Roscoe because Roscoe's got that, the actual inside, the plastic gap that goes on the film is rough there. So it comes out as rough on that one. So I can recognize which one's taken by the Roscoe and which one's taken by the Diana afterwards. They've got real personalities. Each one's got a real personality. And then I was really lucky. I went to Moscow in a role as a dean to talk about exchanges. And it was my counterpart, the dean there, didn't believe that, even though we've got all this, Russia's really good for photography, through art photography, but he didn't believe that photography was an art. So he invited me back to be a artist in residence, and that was funded, thank goodness. And I went round, I gave lectures as well. I gave workshops and lectures, and also I went round to 5 different sites with a translator some of the time, and some of the time on my own. And this is in the graveyard of the monuments. When communism ended, they got all the statues of Stalin and Lenin and various other statues from the communist era and dumped them in this place that looked a bit like wasn't a park. I think it used to be something like people's little private gardens, allotments type place. And so I did a lot of work there. And sometimes I forget to wind on the camera if I'm really involved. I live in this little world of this camera. I don't actually look through the viewfinder very much because its viewfinder's rubbish. You can't really see much through the viewfinder. So sometimes I occasionally, not very often, but I've overlapped this one. I quite liked it. That was my favourite one. I thought it said Russia, really. How I felt about it. Odd. And I produced this catalogue with a colleague who's a designer designed it. And I wanted, and this is where this uncertain terrain comes from. the title of a lot of other work that I produced. It's called Uncertain Terrain. It's because I felt uncomfortable in these places. I didn't feel completely connected to them, and they were odd. And the pictures, I know you think it's daft, but the photographs inside, I've numbered them all but not given an index. And you can't see what it's really called until you open it fully up, little things like that. It just added to the uncertainty of the place. And I visited Oslo as well, recruiting students, and it was only light for a couple of hours when I went there in the middle of the winter, and so my camera didn't really pick up much. The plastic cameras, I've got quite a lot of photographs from there, but this is why I'm so grateful for digital printing, because from scanned negatives, because I would never have got anything out of it if I tried to print it, which is traditional printing. And those 5 of the pictures were from Paris, Moscow, and Oslo, were exhibited in a group exhibition, and I printed them really big. They were 44 inches wide, and it's very, very hard, even on digital printing, to print. And it's easy to print it, but actually dealing with that size of paper is really difficult. It kinks so easily. And also they had a nice catalogue to that one as well. Much more sensibly designed. Right, I'm going to do a tiny bit more theory, and then we finish with the theory. Came across this later actually than 1994, but the mystery model, it's about using art practices to enhance the visceral, sensual and spiritual experience of place. And that's exactly what I've been trying to do. Instead of actually looking at the photograph and seeing lots of detail about what it looks like, I want to show how it feels to be there, what you're feeling, what I'm feeling, and what other people could feel by being there. That's what I'm trying to do. And I use a certain way of photographing. The scopic regimes are ways of seeing, really. They're nothing to do with photography as such, but I've used them. And they're ways of representing the world through painting. It was really shown, not necessarily through photography. And I found this interesting because my plastic camera shows concave images, because they're usually stretched as barrel distortion, and also there's no logic in them, and the energy explodes out of the frame. So it's really important for me that they're square. And in the early pictures on plastic camera, I left the frame on to actually give it a rigid frame, because I want things to come out of the rigid frame. I want it to explode out of the rigid frame. And so I was lucky enough as well, never have I been so lucky. I had an exhibition, but also workshops, and we did lots of really nice workshops in India, and they treated us lovely. It was myself and the technician that worked in the photography department. We both did work on gardens. So we had an exhibition called Uncertain Terrain, the garden. So, and I wanted somebody else to come out with me, and she'd done a lot of printing for me. So it was a really nice thing to go out with her. And when she'd arrived early, and she'd managed to stop them cutting all my pictures to go into landscape size frames. They'd cut the top and the bottom off about 10 pictures before she stopped them. I couldn't believe it. I thought, would they do this to a painting? Probably not. And once I explained to them why I wanted the square frame, with those 10 pictures, I had to cut them smaller into a square. And then put them onto a white sheet of sort of looked like photographic paper, actually photographic paper that wasn't printed on. And then I had a lot of trouble to do before the exhibition opened. I got to say, they treated us like royalty, though. It was so lovely. So I was trying to explain to them why I wanted it square format. So I wanted disorder inside, really mixed up, messy undergrowth type work, and then an obscurity, but I wanted the rigidity of the frame. And one of my students once said that the square format is really quite unique to photography. I know some painters use square, but not very often. And filming doesn't use square. Television doesn't use square. And it's quite unique to photography. It's photography's own shape, if you like. And now, right. Right, now we come on to the more recent work. And it isn't taken with a plastic camera, obviously. And this, I met Dr. Natasha De Vere in the National Botanic Garden of Wales. She's the head of science and conservation. And it's only 2 miles from where I live. So I talked to her about her project, and she's fantastic. She's, I'll just put a picture up. She has DNA barcoded all the flowering plants in Wales. So she's done it in the UK, the whole UK now, but in Wales, that's what she's done. And how can I put it? Yeah, we were the first country to have DNA'd all that. It's 1,147. Now you wonder why she would have done that, but they can do so much. They can find out what different pollens are in honey, and how some honeys are more medicinal than other honeys. And they can do it for preservation, and they can find out what plants the ground had in it centuries or even thousands of years ago. And all sorts of things they can do with it. Now, China has DNA barcoded 5,000 of their 20-odd thousand different species. Wales has only got 1,147 species. And now she's doing the UK, well, she's finished the UK as well. They've done a lot of research with bees, because they can find where bees have been to pollinate, where they've been to make the honey, because they can find the actual flowers in the honey. Right, so I didn't use my plastic camera. I used a Canon 5D, which I've still got here. And I was trying to, I highlighted it in red. I wanted that messiness of that undergrowth, because although it's in a formal garden, these flowers, and some of them were in fields as well. I photographed wildflowers mostly, but they were in the formal gardens and they were in the fields. But it's only when you go to the undergrowth and amongst them that you can see the messiness, if you like. And people saw me with this very expensive camera, sticking it into the middle of what they saw bushes. I wasn't looking through the viewfinder, I just stuck it into bushes. And this is a barcode. They did a visual barcode for me at the bottom there. You see it's in black and white. This other one is in colour. But they represented the DNA barcoding for that particular plant for me for the exhibition. And they did it as a more like a barcode, because when I heard that it was barcoding, when it was called Barcode Wales, I thought there was going to be a barcode like you find on a piece of shopping, you know, like on a tin of beans or something. But it wasn't. It was just letters which they've represented that way. And then we were really lucky. I went to China with the First Minister and various other people. My Vice Chancellor didn't want to go to China, so I went instead. I was the least senior of all the people that went, and companies went as well. And while I was there, I talked about the project I was doing with Natasha. And then they invited me back, the Chinese government and the Welsh government, to open Wales Week in Chongqing. And I had an exhibition in this fantastic, fantastic place. You can see Chongqing in the distance. It's very polluted. You can't see the top of the hotel if you're at the bottom on the street, and you can't see the street if you're in the top of the hotel. And they put them in horrible frames and laminated them as well. but there was 50 photographs in this wonderful setting. But Natasha said to me, because I was a bit upset the way that they were, and she said, let them go, they're not your babies anymore. So I had to, because I'd spent so long printing them. We were on the television, I was in China's Vogue. But the best thing, 1 million visitors, was that people were having their photographs taken with my pictures. And that is such an honour. It really is an honour. We did loads of lectures and spent a lot of time there. And they produced a lovely catalogue, really lovely. It was in English and in Chinese. And then I reprinted the photographs. I reprinted the photographs in an exhibition in the Botanic Gardens and put them in my own frames. Now, while I was there, this gentleman came up to me and said, why aren't your photographs sharp? And I started to say what I was trying to do. He said, and I said, there's always a sharp bit. And he said, well, there isn't in that one, which is this one. And I looked and I thought, he's right, you know, there isn't a sharp bit in that one. It's more like a plastic camera picture that would be taken, but there isn't a sharp. But I just love the feel of that one. And they use this one for the posters and everything. There's usually a tiny bits of sharpness in my pictures. And there it is at the Botanic Gardens. If any of you live in Wales and want an exhibition in a lovely place, this is a really lovely gallery. It's great. You have to do all the work, you know, and do all the advertising and stuff, but it's a really nice gallery. And then Natasha, I'm gonna stop screen sharing again. I should be used to this after a while. Right, stop sharing. And my lovely Canon FD, I bought a little plastic lens. I'll take it off. I thought it's so much easier if I do it if I work digitally, because I'll be able to take lots and lots of photographs, not just 16 or 15 to the film. And so I bought this one. So I used this one for the Barcode UK, which was exhibited in the Botanic Gardens. If I can go up to share screen again. Yeah, were you able to see me? I hope so. Anyway.
Yes, we were. You've just got to go back to the right slide.
I know.
Sorry.
Pain. Oh, there we are. Right. And so I did return to plastic lens, but I used a plastic lens on the digital camera. It's just saved a lot of trouble, but it's not quite the same because everyone is the same sort of feel. It holds, obviously there's no film to hold flat, which it doesn't, the Roscoe doesn't. And it's all worked out how to make it look like a plastic camera. It's like putting a filter on really, but not quite, it's better than putting a filter on, I think. So I like to, when I look through the camera, unless I'm doing commercial work, which it would be a nightmare if this happened if I was doing commercial work. But I like when I look through the camera to actually end up with something different, another world. But I do start to inhabit that world and know what the pictures are going to be like. But I like to be surprised. Being in photography. Lewis Boltz once, no, was it Lewis Boltz? I think it was Lewis Boltz. No, another photographer. I think one of my favorite photographers, yeah, I'm just trying to think who it was. Well, anyway, a photographer, and I'll think of it by the time. Eggleston didn't say it, but it was a photographer. My favorite photographer, one of my favorites is Eggleston, William Eggleston. He said he takes photographs because he likes to see what they come out like in a photograph. He likes to see what he's photographing, how it would come out in a photograph. And it's the same really with me. I like to be surprised on how it would come out in a photograph. These are straight prints with no filters on them. Oh, this one was taken. I also bought, I've also bought a little pinhole as well. I wasn't so pleased with those, but I like this, quite like this one. This is from a pinhole attachment. And these were exhibited in the Science Pavilion of the Eisteddfod. And oh, sorry a minute, just get this, just my notes. And they were hung from the ceiling. They're not as big as the previous ones I did. Oh no, these are the big ones. Yeah, they were very, very large, as you can see, but they weren't printed on photographic paper. They're printed on canvas, sort of special paper that you use for banners and things like that. Banner paper. And then I exhibited them in the Botanic Gardens on the walls. And I had to use the wires that they already had there for training plants. And in between the plants, I put the pictures, because it's a listed wall in the Botanic Garden. And then because of this project and because of Natasha and what she was doing with bees, I wrote a big research project just as I was leaving, actually. They had to re-employ me at work as a researcher instead. I wrote this project called Cross-Pollination, and I brought scientists and artists together. I'm going to go back a minute. I brought scientists and artists together to look at how artists could help scientists with their research into pollinators. So there were pollinator scientists, there was a linguist, an environmental economist. Before the project started, I met with Professor Mike Christie, and he was the economist. And he was very skeptical about how we could use photography or any art, there was lots of art, different sorts of art, with the science. But he had some money left over from a big research project. And so he challenged me to take some photographs for this project called Duress, which looked at two upland rivers, the Teivi and the Towie. And he got me a Sony digital camera with a housing and waterproof housing. So I was able, in freezing cold rivers, to put this camera. So I used lots of half underwater, half not. And it was cold, but it was really enjoyable because the head of the Teivi pools is a wonderful place. You wouldn't really go there. There was nobody there. It's wild. It's just empty and wild, and it's really lovely. And then we started the project, Cross-Pollination Project. And there were 12 different artists, sculptors, painters. I was the only photographer, and different scientists. And we all worked with a particular scientist. This is a catalogue. It was a really, very nice catalogue. We had one of my photographs on the front. And I worked with a man called Andrew Lucas, who's now Dr. Andrew Lucas, and his research project, his PhD, was on hoverflies and the landscape that hoverflies like best. And it was just my type of thing. It was lowland peat bog, practically, and also hoverflies are overlooked. It's like, I called it the forgotten landscape. And these landscapes are very rare now, and they're sort of forgotten, lowland boggy marshlands. And also we went to two different sites, two different fields. This is the son of one of the farmers, and who owns the sites. And I really wanted to do this project because it was that sort of landscape, and it was also the insects that were forgotten as well. So he loved this photograph. I wasn't so keen on it. I didn't think it was that, but he liked it because he said it all to that. And also he said he loved this one as well. So I put the ones he loved in really. And I said, I'm reading from the catalogue now, the two sites I photographed are both places that are not seen as picturesque and wouldn't draw hordes of tourists and photographers. Oh, hang on a minute, it's changed itself. To me, however, they were magical places of quiet, hidden beauty. This collaboration has given me the opportunity to apply my research to a really important science project and has enlightened me to the importance of the fascinating hoverfly. And then he says, I really enjoyed working with Andrea. I visited the flower-rich pastures where I do my research dozens of times now, but her photographs have given me a completely different perspective on these beautiful and now rare habitats. Not only that, but I have been using her photographs in talks and papers about the science we are doing and give our audience the real feel of these very special places. Yeah, it was great to do that project, really. I really enjoyed it, and it was nice to have. Anyway, so I noticed one day that you had this box. When you opened it, it had all these little hoverflies all pinned. And I said, oh, can I photograph some of those? And I had to get some extension rings for my camera. So then it's about 1-to-1, or even, yeah, 1-to-1. And so I photographed these, and it was lovely there. You couldn't see anything. And then when you brought them really, really close to the lens, almost touching the lens, you suddenly became aware of their faces. I know some photographers do lots of different photographs at different depths of focus so that you can put them all together so they're all sharp. I didn't want that. I wanted them to look like little characters and just have their faces photographed, like. And then these were photographed, these were exhibited in the Botanic Gardens, but also in Dr. Bynum's bug farm, because she's a researcher into bugs as well, where they do research into eating different types of bugs. So I'm just going to play this little video. Right. You will see that this up, these very helpful young men. And then I didn't think they fitted properly because I'm fussy. And they had to take it all down again and put it up again. I didn't do a lot of photographs. I only took about 5 different pollinate insects. So there we are. So I had the different hoverflies. These aren't as good as the later ones I did, which I'm going to talk about now. I hadn't got it quite right, I don't think, photographing the hoverfly faces. I think they were wonderful to see them first of all, but I'm not so sure about it now, really. So it was a very successful project. In fact, some of the scientists are writing into their research bids. They're all pollinator scientists. Some of them are writing into the research bids artists, a little bit of money for artists to do some work as well. They said some really great things in the book, in the catalogue. Really, they really changed their minds. Some of them are very skeptical at first. And one of the scientists was Scott McCart, Professor Scott McCart from Cornell University in America, in New York State. And he invited 4 of us over at different times. And they had a load of money that had been left from President Obama had given loads of money to research pollinators. And they had one of the biggest insect housings, collections of all. Some of the insects that they had were collected in 1840, and they were still preserved in this amazing library of insects. So I asked if I could photograph their bees and hoverflies. So I had a PhD student working with me because I wasn't allowed to touch them, and she would go and get interesting ones and pin them. They've got pins through them, just like the hoverflies, and it took me about an hour per one. I've done 40, I think, to get rid of the pins. Luckily, they're out of focus there, so the pins are. So.
How old would some of these be, Andrea?
Sorry?
How old would some of these be? When did they live?
Some of them I've noticed. Some of them I were like collected in the 19th century, but most of them were collected in the 20th century, and usually around about the 1960s, most of them that I photographed. But they kept so, the thing about Andrew's ones, the hoverflies, he hadn't got the facilities to preserve these insects in the same way. So that's one of the reasons they weren't so right. But also I'd learned a lot more about how to photograph them so close up, because the smaller ones are touching the lens, you know, I've nearly touching the lens. So I'm talking about less than a millimeter away from the lens. And some of them, because I'm using a Canon 5D, it's quite high resolution. So I was able to cut them down quite to square format, but also go in a bit further as well. And I blew them up. Well, you'll see how the bigger ones. I've took 40. I've got 40 smaller images and about 12 larger images. Oh, this little bee is from Australia, and it digs holes in the ground. And I've seen on the internet a fantastic picture of it poking its little face out of the hole. And this one was really, really small, this bee. Now this one I didn't think I'd put in, because the more I look at it, the more I think, oh, people from the RPS are going to say, why isn't its nose sharp? I did have ones with its nose sharp and then its antennae not sharp. Well, the eyes not sharp. Yeah, I made that decision to use that one, but I was on the smallest aperture I could be on, so I wanted to make them look like I did with the hoverflies, like individual little characters, so people don't think of bees as being, oh, they're just bees. They're all around the world they come from, and they're just fascinating. And I can't really explain how I thought of doing a video to try and show you, but I can't explain how it feels when you you don't know what she's going to bring anyway. And then it's all out of focus. You know, it's a brightly colored one, you can see that. And then you suddenly bring it to the lens, and because you don't do any focusing with that sort of close up, you never try and focus with the lens, because you're moving the lens anyway, so you're moving two things in. So you actually you get the right optimum focus, and then you bring the bee to the focus, to the lens. I studied that when I did scientific photography. But when their little faces appear, I talk about them like they're little sweet things. Some of them can sting, I know, but it's just so lovely to see that suddenly appearing out of nowhere. And I wanted to make them look as though they were all flying and still alive, you know. I'm not showing you all 40, I'm only showing you a very small selection. And then they were exhibited with all the other artworks. So other people, we had the exhibition, but new works going over there from the Pollinator Project. And they called it Pollination because there were two nations meeting together. And they used some of the works in there, and you can see my photographs on the wall behind. They're about a meter long, I suppose. Yeah, about a meter long. Yeah. So I think that's about it. Now that's about it for everything. I don't know whether people want to just see very quickly some portraits. What do you think, Stuart?
I think that'd be a great idea, yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't been too long, have I?
No, you've been really good. Really good, thank you.
Okay. Alongside, I would never call myself a portrait photographer. I like things to be still when I photograph them, really. But oddly enough, I've become a portrait photographer. I mean, that's one of the reasons I did the portraits of the insects, because I started doing portraits. A friend of mine, Joe Davis, who's an illustrator and writes lots of books, did a fantastic book on called Making Great Illustration. And she wanted photographs of the studios and the actual illustrators. I wasn't quite so pleased on the ones they chose sometimes, but I saw some fantastic illustrators. So I've got Ronald Searle there, who is an amazing man. He's sadly died. He was 90 there. He's died now, but he was the one in the Japanese prisoner of war camp that made paintings while he was over there. And then Rolf Steadman, you may have heard of, who does all the splashy type cartoons. That's one of the pages from the book. So I couldn't do the whole book because it meant going all over the world, and I was busy as a dean. But I got another colleague to do. He is a portrait photographer, and he did quite a few portraits as well. I wanted quite relaxed pictures. I didn't want them very framed, so I started by taking photographs while they were being interviewed. And that's my original idea. I was going to have like a sequence of each person. And this is Mariscal in Xavier Mariscal. He designed the Barcelona Olympics. I think he was doing an animation while we were there. He smoked a lot. He hadn't got cigarettes in his hand there, has he? But he mostly was smoking, and very expressive. And he lived in Barcelona. And I like those. I like the whole set. Shame he's not looking at me. Shame he's looking at the interviewer. But and there's Rolf Steadman. This is a photograph that they didn't use, but I liked it. It's me in the mirror there. And also, while I was there, for most of them, not all of them, but for a few of them, I'd say, but not all of them, I took my plastic camera as well, and photographed them as long as it was still light. Quentin Blake, I photographed him, but it was dark it was in the wintertime, and it was dark by the time he'd finished the interview and everything. So I always meant to go back and photograph him with a plastic camera because he was a really nice man. But and amazing to see him drawing. He did some drawing, and he was like a ballerina, it's like with a dipping pen and drawing. It was phenomenal. And he met some wonderful people. On the right is Ronald Searle again with his wife, both sadly passed now. But I wanted these really, I don't know, quiet little plastic camera pictures. And I like this one of these two girls two illustrators who work as a team in Copenhagen. I like the two bicycles and things. And they were exhibited in Plymouth amongst at the exhibition called Making Great Illustration, and all the illustrators put the work in. And on the left is my colleague's portraits that he did as well. So I never saw them again. They went to China and I never saw them again. But they got all the illustrations back, but somehow didn't get my pictures back. And then I was asked to photograph artists for a magazine called CCQ, Cultural Quarterly. Anyway, it's a Welsh arts magazine. Bedwyr Williams, Welsh artist. They didn't use that. Oh, they didn't use this one. I like this one best, but they didn't use it. They used another sitting down. And Shani Rees James, who's a well-known painter nationally. And it was pouring, absolutely pouring of rain and windy, and it was a little cottage up in mid to North Wales. And the light's coming. It's obviously I hadn't strapped my camera. I like that, what it does with a plastic camera. And they really like this one. They use this one as a big full page spread. Can never get, I talked about cross curves. This one shows it really well. This one actually shows the cross, because I can never get it the right color. This is greeny blue, but if you go too yellow, everything goes too yellow, and so I keep it like it is, this bluey color. And then finally, I got lots more portraits, but I only put a few in at the end. I'd been over when I was over at Cornell, I went down to see my aunt and uncle, who are very elderly, and to photograph them for an exhibition as part of the Cardiff photo exhibition and photo festival. And they were doing on I think America and Britain, and this I called mine Home and Away. And it was my aunt and uncle's, they live in a trailer. And so they have an American flag outside, and then the inside they have pictures of the Queen and very English looking. And I'll finish with this last picture of them having a kiss. They're both passed away now as well, like my mum and dad. So I've started with my mum and dad and finished with my aunt and uncle. So and so they're more personal photographs to me, really. That light haloing them is just a lucky thing. The light haloing them comes from the wing mirror of the car. And it was just there. It's, you know, you're going to make the most of golden opportunities when you've got something like that. So there we are. Thank you. So I'll stop sharing now.
Andrea, that's great. Thank you very much. So in a moment, I'll invite everybody to ask questions. I'd just like to ask you a quick question first, if I may, please, Andrea. Obviously, you know, it's really fascinating how you spoke about your engagement with the landscape, where you kind of just didn't want to look at it from a distance. You really wanted to get into it and sort of almost embed you in the landscape. And I guess the timescale we're talking about, there was a big movement towards this. I think Frank Webster wrote the book New Photography in the late 70s, where there was this move away from
topographics.
And I just wondered whether, I mean, in Derbyshire we had sort of photographers like John Blakemore and Faye Godwin and Paul Hill. I just wondered whether you'd worked with them at all, or exchanged ideas with them.
Yeah, I had exchanged. I've been to a lot of talks by them all. John Blakemore, I did go into his darkroom and talk to him, and he showed me the prints, and because I was quite friendly with his partner, she was a good friend of mine. Yeah, that's why I used John Blakemore's quote. I used that in the talk. Not so much Paul Hill, although I've spoken to him on the phone a few times. I don't really know him that well. Who was the other one you said? And when I was at Bournemouth, I had who was it you said the other one?
Faye Godwin.
Faye Godwin, yes. She came down to do a lecture. She might have done a lecture. In the old days, I saw some good lectures from Bournemouth. We went out with students to the RPS. Yeah. So some really good lectures there as well. I also went to the Photographers Gallery. They used to have lots of lectures there when it was the old gallery, and in Leicester Square. And I saw Nan Goldin. So a lot of people who influenced me have been documentary photographers, oddly enough. Like Nick Waplington, I use as an example of the Baroque. And Nan Golding, I've talked about in my PhD. I've talked about Martin Parr in my PhD. Nan Golding's the same age as me, and she photographed herself, really, his autobiography, in New York in the time of the 80s and the AIDS, and then the AIDS epidemic. Well, it was the 70s, so 76, I think she did hers. And then the AIDS epidemic hit. And so a lot of her friends, because she really lived on the edge, really, in New York, and a lot of her friends died. You know, a bit like It's a Sin, the program that's out at the moment. Oh, fantastic program, series. Anyway, so when I went and saw her, I went with Martin Parr and a few other people. We were sitting there. I came out gutted. So then I thought, the documentary, I get more affected by photographs that really hit me in the gut rather than the heart, if you see what I mean. Yeah. When I think, oh my God, you know, Richard Billingham is the best example of that. With Razor Laugh, I can't get through that book. You know, I can only look at what I've seen. I've invited him to Swansea. He gave a talk at Swansea, and his work is so visceral, as the word that man was using. It really is so visceral, isn't it? You know, it's not easily. It's not easily just digested, if you like, with your eye, because that, you know, I said about not using your sight to look at things. When you look at photographs like his, you are looking at them do become very physical and very disturbing.
Yeah, you know? Very much so. And I guess working in the areas, the geographic areas, you must have worked with Jem Southern.
Yeah, well, Jem Southern was one of my, he was one of my examiners, 2 examiners for the PhD. He was one of my examiners. I had to have an internal examiner as well because I was a member of staff. So there was 3 examiners altogether. Usually you have 1 examiner and an internal, but if you're a member of staff or connected to the university at all, you have 2. He was really, I haven't shown some of the work I did for the PhD, which was with very early mobile phone camera. It was about 2002, 2003, an advert came on for Orange, and they described how you should take a portrait, and you should sit in a sitter and you should have them slightly to the side and look at them, all the things like that. Keep them still and get them out. And anyway, at the same time as they were talking over the voiceover, they were showing all these random pictures of a seagull flying and I thought, wow, that's a way of photographing the landscape. This is before I actually used a plastic camera. So I photographed a tour of Wales and sent the pictures directly to the gallery. I did a turner's tour of Wales, but I didn't look at the view. I looked backwards in things like that.
Yep.
And one of them was the top of Snowdon, and it was at the same time as foot and mouth disease. And when it got back to the people in the gallery, they thought there was people climbing over dead bodies of animals because it was so pixelated that when I blew them up big, very big, I blew them up, the squares were about 3 inches by 3 inches of pixel.
Oh, wow.
It was so big. Yeah, but some of them never made it because they had to go from mid Wales across, this is what I was told by Orange, mid Wales across to Ireland, back to Liverpool, down to Bristol, and then to Swansea. And some of them are still in the ether, like floating.
They'll arrive, they're on Mars at the moment.
Which was really difficult for me as a photographer photographers like to preserve things.
Yeah.
And really difficult for somebody that likes to look after their negatives and keep them, And then there's my photographs that have vanished from without.
So there could be aliens looking at them right now on Venus.
Yes.
Yeah. So Anne asks whether you process your own film when using the plastic camera.
Yes, I used to. Then when I had bad asthma, I used to, the technician used to do it for me. I used to give a bit of, buy them a bottle or something.
Yeah.
But I always did them in house. But the last portraits, the ones that you saw, no, not those. The next lot of portraits I did, you haven't seen them for the magazine, because I didn't have access to the university because it was the summertime. I had to send them out to do, and I had to ask them to develop them for another minute.
Yep.
But I don't know whether they were able to. I can't remember now, but I know I was really, really grateful to be able to scan them in.
Brilliant.
Because you can do so much once you scan something in. You don't have, all my original work, all the stuff up until I started using digital printing. The plastic camera was all digital printing. All the time up to digital printing, I was having to retouch by hand.
Right.
And I've still got my little retouching kit and my very perfect little paintbrushes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because you always had to retouch. You always had to.
Very much so, yeah. And Lo was asking, she looked at some of your images and wondered whether you had ever used something like a lens baby lens. They were very reminiscent of the undergrowth shots, were very reminiscent of the sort of way that the lens baby lenses work.
No, I've never. No, she'll have to send me some details of that. That sounds fascinating.
Brilliant. Oh, right. A new world for
you. Used them? You used them. Do you know what they are?
I do know what they are. Yeah, it's about the way they focusing very soft. It's like do you remember when we used to?
Oh no, yeah, I know what you mean. It's soft focus, yeah.
Yeah, soft.
I don't sort of want. Oddly enough, I don't really want soft focus. Like I would have liked it for this camera on me, the video today.
Yeah.
I would have liked soft focus, but I don't. I'm looking for like one little bit of sharpness, although that man said, and he was quite right. I was so embarrassed. I want one little bit of sharpness, and these plastic lenses, they tend to focus sharply right in the middle.
We
Yeah.
have just, you mentioned the RPS earlier, we have just had a fantastic RPS fellowship panel go through. The photographer built his own camera. He took a series of portraits. I don't think anything was in focus in them, but they were just so emotional and so amazing. That,
Oh, that's good. I'm glad he got through, because Juliet Margaret Cameron was turned down to the RPS.
before my time.
I know, but because their photographs weren't sharp.
No, I know.
Because they were atmospheric, and in a way, that's the sort of thing that I'm saying about. I don't even know whether they are. See, when I got the Education Award, they asked me to send in 10 pictures. They've put one of them up on the website, but they haven't put any of the others up. I don't think.
I don't think we mentioned that, did we? Last year, you were awarded the award for education, which was marvelous.
I got the Fenton Medal in 2016 as well, so that was really nice. So the RPS has been really good for me. You know, I've helped them, but they've been good for me as well.
That's really nice to hear. Yeah. So when you talked about the scopic regimes, you had 3 subheadings. The first being Baroque, but would you tell me the other 2, please?
Right. Okay. It's I know them off by heart. Cartesian Perspectivalism, and that is the traditional one lens, one eye view of the world, and it sort of deals with perspective in the normal standard way that we've grown up with perspective, with the one eye rather than the 2 eyes, because it comes on it's after Descartes and the philosophy of it. Anyway, there's more philosophy to it as well, but it's really having order, and you could use the thirds and all that sort of thing. It's about that type of order and tradition in painting, photography, whatever, and ways of seeing. They are called ways of seeing, these scopic regimes. The other one is descriptive, and the nearest photographer that I used as an example of descriptive was William Eggleston. And it's after the mapping, the Dutch mapping. They used to have paintings in the middle and then descriptive maps around the outside. And nothing is contained necessarily in the frame. If you look at a William Eggleston photograph, you'll see things going out of the frame. So it makes great reference to what's outside the frame. I'd like mine to make great reference to what's outside the frame. That mine is just part of it, and you can feel what's around you, but whether they do or not, I don't know. And mine's only just one way of doing it. So you could, well, William Eggleston photographed landscape from using that sort of way of working. Everything's quite flat with his work as well. It's sort of 2-dimensional. And his lovely quote about where have you, at the dinner party, what have you been photographing today? Well, I've been photographing bits of tarmac and dust and odds and ends like that. I can't remember the exact quote, but that's what he says, which when I give a talk to students, which is more theoretical, I include his work, and I include lots of different people's work, and Jem Southern as well. His work is quite falls into the description category, I think, as well.
Julian mentions that you can get sharp areas with lens babies, and that's absolutely right. It's a little bit like where you smear the Vaseline around the edge.
Oh yeah. We did all do all that sort of. We did when I was at Plymouth before I did scientific photography. We learned how to photograph a glass bottle on a white background, on a black background, how to do a low key portrait, high key portrait, soft focus, all those sort of things. We learned how to do it. Yeah. And that's, even though I haven't done that now, it's been really, really useful because I know how things work.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I did all the science as well to it. And I loved physics when I was at school anyway. So learning, and chemistry I had to give up to do art, but I love sciences anyway. So
well, I've got Afsal who would like to ask a question, if that's okay. So Afsal, can I introduce you? Can I invite you to?
Thank you, Stuart. Hello, Andrea. Afzal here.
Hi.
You're looking well.
Thank you.
Your talk has been absolutely inspirational.
Oh,
Very
fab.
inspiring.
Thank you.
You know, my background is in medical and scientific,
Yes.
but I think I need to go out and start taking landscapes. But do you know what you have just done?
No.
You have just now increased the price of all the plastic cameras in the market.
Actually, to be honest, Ansel, they were quite expensive anyway, because just after mine weren't. No, my first one wasn't, my Roscoe, but when I tried to buy the Diana, it had gone up so much because it was a real trend in the universities. It became, people studying photography. It was the sort of, I think personally, it was as digital got more popular and better, you had better, obviously, you could do more with it because the resolution got better and better. I think students rebelled against it. It's like calligraphy got very popular after people were using Word, Microsoft Word. And I think because digital is so perfect, or you can make it so perfect, I think people wanted that imperfection of real pure photography.
See, what's happening these days, if you look at the lenses, the resolution of the lenses is going beyond the resolution of human eye.
Yes.
And that defeats the purpose. And the lenses are so very expensive. I mean, a Leica lens could cost you up to £10,000.
Yes, yes.
But the other comment I wanted to make, you touched upon and you elaborated upon collaboration between artists and scientists, interdisciplinary projects. I think we need to see more of those.
We do, and I did it for the AHRC. They had a call for bids for networking projects, and they wanted them within the environmental issues. So I managed. I didn't think I would be so successful. I got some of the top pollinator scientists in the world, and one of our top people is in Britain, Simon. I've forgotten the name, so I'm not going to talk about the names of people, but they were people. They were so brilliant, these scientists, and a lot of them, some of them that came to the talks were the younger ones that were working for these top scientists as well, and they were the ones that became more involved in the project. And I just read what one of them said, because it's such a great thing to end on with this catalogue. Although I originally had some misgivings on how arts and sciences would work together, with both disciplines having such different methods and processes, I was immediately put to rights! This project has opened up a whole set of ideas and ways of looking at scientific research. The whole process has been truly enjoyable. The project has given me a new insight into visualizing scientific research to a much wider audience, and to me, at least, very novel methods. So, and the whole process has been a big eye-opener for me, and I hope to continue collaborating with the arts and across other disciplines through my career. And they're from Reading University, and they're some of the top ones in Britain. And they immediately after he was involved in this project, he went back to his boss, who then wrote, when they wrote a bid, the next bid they wrote to this the Environmental Research Council, they had about £10,000 for artists to work with them. They put in the bid, and they got the bid as well. So yeah, it's been great. It wasn't just photography. We had sculptors and painters and various other people.
Before Afsal buys up all the plastic lenses, and Stephen was just asking the make. Was it a Diana lens?
Yeah, the one that is much more sturdy and is a Diana.
Yeah.
And the little one I managed to get, first of all, was called a Roscoe, R-O-S-K-O. I think it's Russian. Brilliant. But it was a very cheap camera. See, these sort of cameras, when they were bought for holidays and things, they take 120 film, which is lovely. But they were only used to having about maybe 4 films put through them in their lifetimes, because people only went on holiday once a year, and sort of people that bought these cameras anyway. And
what about the lens on the front of the Canon? Was that a dyno lens?
that's a Helga. That's a
Helga.
Helga.
I just wanted to check on you because I haven't heard from you for 2 days, you know, so I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very
No worries,
easy.
no worries. You enjoy.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
It's very
Okay,
little
Betty. Love you now, please.
Sorry, we've got somebody who's unmuted. I can't see who it is on the list. Is it? Oh, there we go. Carry on, please, Andrea. Yeah.
I say that it's very easy to take that one off and put the big. You know, that's a normal lens I use.
Yeah.
I use for the first ones, and then and I use that for the bees with the extension rings, 1-to-1. It goes to 1-to-1. Which you imagine if your bee's only that big, it's still not going to be that huge on the thing.
No.
And I'm trying to find where my little pinhole one is as well. But my camera I used to use a lot before I started digital, and before I started the plastic camera, so I went from the sublime to ridiculous, is my Vista.
Beautiful.
It's a lovely camera. It is really beautiful. It's very dusty. I had to dust it when I took it down from the shelf. It's very beautiful.
Well, thank you for those questions, Ansel. They were marvellous. Had you sort of finished, Afsel?
Yes, thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you very much, Andrea.
I know Afsel from the research panel, don't I, Afsel?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. We've got 50% of the research panel. I don't know if people are aware of the research distinction that the RPS does, but it's really an interesting area, and it's really on the increase.
And people can do more technical research. You know, if they're more interested in the sort of technical things, or they can do more academic research, like I would have done. Really, my research was mostly qualitative research, as they call it, but there was a bit of quantitative research as well. The first chapter is quite boring to people that aren't interested in that. I laboriously went through all these books and a website giving instructions to photographers, and picked out words and phrases from each of them and matched them up. So it was, you know, quite a logical thing to do. You know, when you see my work, it looks quite chaotic, but I'm quite a logical person, really.
Yeah. Presumably what you mean is you interviewed an awful lot of people, and I guess that was where you were looking at how people feel about
it was actually looking at books. I didn't actually interview very many people for it. I mostly looked at writings and as I said, these books, and then a lot of interviews I watched on the internet.
Yeah.
So because what I was trying to show is find a way of showing the problems with the environment, and a lot of what they call this Cartesian Perspectivalism, which is a hell of a mouthful. I'm sure they could have thought of something a little bit better than that. Will make Arcadia, or make beautiful out of destruction. Yeah. And I did a critique on Joel Meyerwitz, who used to be one of my favorite photographers, but when he did Ground Zero, so I had a whole chapter on how he turned Ground Zero into Arcadia. Right. And then I had to find another way. I'm not saying that my way is the only way. It's just that it's just a different perspective, and I think some of our landscapes don't need to be remembered rather than forgotten. You know, like there's enough hedgerow been lost in the last, when I wrote the thing, from the last 50 years, say from 1950s or 40s, there was enough hedgerow to from Britain to circumnavigate the world 7 times. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Oh. That's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sort of aware that I think a lot of people have got another event they're going to at 4 o'clock.
Oh yeah, we're nearly up to 4 o'clock anyway, aren't we?
So were there just any other final questions at all that people wanted to ask, or are we about there?
They've been very interesting questions. So.
I have. Well, look, Andrew, that was amazing. Thank you ever so much. It's really sort of shown the variety of photography that you've been involved in over the last 50 years. And I think a lot of people will have gained a lot of ideas that they can build into their own photography practice in a way. As you say, the plastic lenses, and of course there's lots of other lenses that you can put on the digital cameras to change that finish. So
Yes, yeah.
thank you ever so much for sharing.
Thank you, everybody.
Your lifetime. Yeah, thank you. And I hope everybody's enjoyed it, and thank you for joining us. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Andrea.
Thank you.